morning, welcome to sunny Florida. Today we're going to cover container gardening, and that's one aspect of what I do. I try and garden as much as I can in many different ways. So container gardening has various components to it. You've got your container, of which there's a huge array of containers. You've got your medium, your soil, and again there's a large array to choose from. I'll show you the containers I have, and you'll have to experiment with the different soils, and we'll talk more about that. There is the planting stock, whether you're using cuttings or if you're using transplants or direct seed or all of the above. It's what I do. I do a little bit of each. And then you got to make sure they're getting watered correctly, properly, not overwatered, not underwatered, and we'll talk more about that. And then the one thing about a container is that it needs a little more attention on the feeding aspect of it. You're not getting in there and redoing the container as often as you might with a soil bed, and the soil bed has the larger environment of microbial support and soil life, so you have to pay a little more attention to getting the microbes going and keeping them happy within the confines of the container. So that's one of the main differences.
So here are some of the different containers that I have. This particular one happens to be my favorite, which is the earth box. It has a little reservoir in the bottom, and it's got a real good drainage, and so it consistently waters for you, although I have these in the range of my sprinkler system. So I've got mint and thyme and some nasturtiums that weren't doing so good, but I just fed them yesterday with some fish emulsion, so we'll see how that helps. They did well at first, but I think they extinguished the available nutrients, so we're trying to give them more nutrients.
Here, I wanted to take a moment to explain why the earth box is my favorite container to grow in. It's got several really great features. Number one, it has this reservoir in the bottom with an overflow, so when the reservoir is full, the excess water is able to escape through this overflow. Also, it has these two wicking areas in the corner, so once you put the bottom in, it creates a barrier between the reservoir and the growing medium that you're going to place in here, and you push the growing medium down, you compress it down into these corners, and once it's full, it wicks the water up out of the reservoir into the container, so into the root zone, so it'll feed the plants that are planted in here on a ongoing basis in a very subtle way, and the exact amount of water they need. Also, it has this little tube here that is a filling tube, so once it's full of soil, you may have noticed in the other photo, is you can fill the reservoir from here without saturating your soil.
Here we have some blueberries in containers that are adjoining the in-the-ground blueberry plants. Here we have some rosemary bushes that have been with me for a long time. One more blueberry and another rosemary. And these are olive containers in different containers, 40-gallon containers that were cut in half, and I had to drill drainage holes in them to make sure that they had drainage, which is critical that the containers have good drainage.
This is a container that I've been using for many years, and it's a cast container. It's very heavy, but what I wanted to show you is they have these drain holes in the bottom, and sometimes when you put it on a hard surface or even on a mulch surface, that drain hole over time can become plugged. And once it gets like a solid plug and it doesn't allow proper drainage, it can be a problem. You end up with an anaerobic condition in here where your soil will begin to rot and your roots will rot and the plant will die. So it's very important from time to time that if you notice a problem, that you try and clear that drain hole somehow. Here's an example of a container that has a single drain hole, and you can see that I have it up on top of these little bricks to keep it raised so the drain hole doesn't get plugged. And this is just an old cast iron kettle, and the same, it's got a couple holes drilled in it, and there's just some zinnias growing in that. Over here we've got some Cuban oregano doing quite well, and then some ornamental plants. Basically it's just my nursery stock, which are in containers and need to be paid attention to. So these are plants that I'm growing to either up them into larger containers or put them out into my greater lands. So here's a couple of the container potting mix I use, and I've experimented. Some I like better than others. I like this Miracle Grow one right now. It's one of my favorites because it is properly screened. This other one, and these are all organic plant potting mixes, but some you'll find are screened better than others, and they are OMRI listed, which means they're approved for organic. And there's the OMRI listing. Now this is a garden soil, so this is not potting soil, so be careful when you're buying these bags. You definitely want something that is potting soil. And here is one more example of some of the potting soil I use. We spoke a little bit about the need to feed the plants growing in containers. So this is fish emulsion that I use, and it's got the instruction on how much to mix to a gallon. A little warning, it has got a strong smell. You don't want to get it on your clothes. So that's one liquid that I use as a drench. And the other liquid that I use as a drench is, I just got a little bit of compost in a bucket here, and you can see it on the bottom. But I'll use this liquid on the top of the compost, almost like a compost tea as a drench. And then I will, what we say, side dress. I will apply a little compost on some plants. And then here is a purchased pelletized chicken manure. So I will use all four of these different methods, 2 drenches and 2 dry fertilizer sources for my containers on a regular basis. So you have this wand, and this particular one is adjustable. So you got different settings that put out finer or heavier streams of water. Usually for the containers you want a finer stream. And then my old faithful handy just water nozzle, hose nozzle. So this is one sprinkler that I like very much. It covers my garden as well as it hits many of the different pots that I have planted here. So it's a good sprinkler. It's gentle, and you can adjust the arc. This particular little sprinkler is a bubbler, and it works very good for some of the larger pots. You can see the bubbler here in this photo, and it's very good for pots that don't lie within reach of a sprinkler head, and they're very effective in large pots. This is a little mist head, so these are called MICROJETS, and these work on reduced pressure. So there's a poly tube there that feeds the little spaghetti tube. You can also get these little handy shut-offs that allow you to shut the water completely off or to adjust it down for plants that need less water than the other plants that may be on the same irrigation line. So that's a brief introduction to the different components of gardening with containers, container gardening. So I urge you just to dig in and take the plunge and get your hands dirty, and it'll take some experimentation to see what works for you, how much sun, how much shade, what kind of soil mix, and your plant selection of what you want to grow. I have a good friend, and he came up with a very clever design using rain gutters, and he attached them on one side of his house right at this level, so it was easy to work on, right outside of his kitchen, so he had many herbs and lots of little things like arugula and stuff in his, and he calls it gutter gardening. So we're down in the gutter, and that's my friend Jerry, so we have to give him credit. But that's just one example of how you can get creative and make container gardening work for you. So with that, go to it, good luck, and thanks for tuning in. Please share this with your friends, please subscribe, and I hope you're doing well, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.